Now that the New Year's madness is over, it's time to work on your story for 2018. LegalZoom can help you make this the year you finally get serious about launching and running your own business. It can also help you rest a little easier knowing that your family's future is squared away with the right estate plan. As a matter of fact, LegalZoom has been helping people just like you take care of their dreams and responsibilities for more than 16 years. Now, LegalZoom is not a law firm, but they have the resources to keep you on the right path, including advice from their nationwide network of independent attorneys, all at your fingertips. Whether you want to take your business to the next level or take control of your family's future with an estate plan, LegalZoom plugs right into your life without billing you by the hour, because at LegalZoom, all pricing is given up front. Start writing your 2018 story with LegalZoom right now. Go to LegalZoom.com/Golic and get special savings. That's LegalZoom.com/Golic. LegalZoom, where life meets legal. LegalZoom.com/Golic.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself in the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Good Wednesday morning, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN News for the foreseeable minutes. We will be transferring our TV side over to ESPN2 in just a few seconds, as Roger Federer has indeed moved on to the semifinals at the Australian Open in a straight set win over Thomas Burdick. They are wrapping up their coverage there, and once their coverage ends, we will bounce to ESPN2 on the TV side. Glad you're with us. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests joined us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance
I would
line.
have to imagine that playing tennis, I obviously never played that competitively, and no matter what, you'd like to be done in 3 sets,
yes.
No matter your age.
Yes.
But I'd imagine if you're a little older, it's got to feel a lot better for Roger Federer, who's, 62, 63 years old?
36, but close.
Whatever it is, to get it done in 3 sets.
Exactly.
And go, okay, I'm done, thank you.
36 in tennis years, which is 62 for the rest of us.
Yeah,
and
if you're going cat years or dog years, you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
I mean, what he's doing
you
is remarkable.
Be like, whoo, okay, I'm done with this.
Well, it's I was listening on the broadcast of the Spurs-Cavs game last night, and it was the players-only broadcast on TNT, and they were saying, one of the advice that they got when they were young players was to limit the amount of times you're on the floor, because as you go up and the amount of times you're falling down, all of those little things add up over time. So all of those minutes on the court for Federer, and there have been plenty of them, have added up over time in a way where he walks off there and goes, all right, I'll take the extra 6.
It is a difference, because I could just speak of it from my terms of 9 years. In those first few years, the game ends, and that Monday, Tuesday, that day off, you're kind of ready to go. You feel good. By my last couple of years, I mean, you're talking Wednesday practice, Thursday practice. You're still kind of sore going,
oh, yeah.
Oh man.
Especially when Thursday games are involved.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But what Federer's doing now at the back half of his career is remarkable.
It's incredible.
I mean, he's got 19 slams. He's probably going to win his 20th. I think he's facing unseeded Young Chang, the 21-year-old from Korea, in the semifinals. Look, it's just he's putting the record so far away from anybody else. It is absolutely astounding.
So, but let me ask you this, because we sit here and talk about what we want to talk about in the show, and then 30 seconds into the show, we completely go away from what we were.
Which is why we're a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. That's exactly right. You cover Wimbledon for us. You're a tennis guy. You know the sport well. Just like Greeny did when I was doing the show with him. He knows the sport well.
Sorry, man.
So let me ask you.
Yeah.
Is this the way Federer is openly saying, I'm taking breaks?
Yeah.
Taking breaks. If that becomes a thing, is that good or bad for tennis? If other players who start aging up, or even if they don't, start saying, well, wait a minute, maybe I'll take a break for a little bit, even though I'm a little younger and I'm not feeling those effects there. Maybe it will help me for longevity's sake. Is that good for the sport?
I think it is if you're Roger Federer. I'm not so if it's other people, because the longer it's like the longer Tom Brady plays, it's better for everybody in football except the other 31 teams.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you're doing things that are so remarkable and so beyond the pale that you have to make sure that, the longer you can be the superstar of the sport, then I think it's better for the sport. But I think we all agree we love superstars. We pretend like we don't, but we really love dynasties.
Okay, that's the easy part. If Federer does it, we're good.
Yes.
But when others look at Federer and say, oh, look what he's doing, maybe I'll try that, that's more my point.
Well, take it as a model because no one's going to do it to the extent Roger is, but everyone who's self-aware enough to assess their own lot says, all right, how can I apply this to my situation? We see it in rest all the time in the NBA now where everyone's not LeBron James, but the star players are still looking at opportunities for rest and saying, let's take them. And this has been happening in the PGA as well where guys are scheduling themselves.
Tiger's done that for years.
Yeah.
He's scheduled what's around the best way to prepare himself for majors.
And more and more guys have done that. So I guess I think that's the point he is trying to make is if this becomes more of the trend for everyone to whatever their extent of that is.
Well, look, as someone who covers tennis and follows tennis, there are certain events that are, most people look at the four majors or the four slams as the tennis year.
Absolutely.
They don't.
Right.
I mean, they don't understand, the events of Biscayne or Indian Wells or all this kind of stuff.
Which they want people to buy tickets for and show up for. But if guys are picking and choosing, then the events aren't as popular.
No, you're exactly right. That's the concern for the long-term stability of the year-round sport. But at the end of the day, the more you get someone like Federer out there, I think it's better for the sport. But if other people start doing that and they're not Roger Federer, then it becomes a bigger issue. No, you're absolutely right. But the biggest issue now is that Roger Federer is a couple matches away from his 20th Grand Slam, which
he is
absolutely remarkable. So we'll have that again. And you mentioned LeBron James. We've got a lot to get into with LeBron James today on the court and on social media. There's a lot of things that are going on there. We've got the potential of the Baseball Hall of Fame at 6 o'clock tonight. The vote getting in tonight. We'll talk about that. And once again, it's the era of the steroid players. How you feel about that? Whether you think they're getting in? We'll have that discussion. Tim Legel will join us in the 8 o'clock hour to talk about what's wrong and maybe what could be right with the Cavs. And are we forgetting that they're not the only team that's struggling in the East? When you look at who might get back to the NBA Finals from the Eastern Conference, Joe Thomas will join us. Still the Browns' offensive lineman, although maybe he won't be going forward. We'll find that out.
We're going to pin him down and ask him.
Well, good luck you pinning him down. Yeah, okay. I have no chance to pin down Joe Thomas.
I know where he just had surgery. Yeah. I'll be the classic D lineman knowing where the O lineman injury is and going for it.
That's what I would do every time I'd fight you. I know all the spots where you had surgery, so I took full advantage of them.
You know what it is? It's fair, right?
Strategy.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm just going to let you. That's a segment. Let the Golics fight. We're going to do that. We'll do that a TV-only segment. Let the Golics fight.
Easter 2014.
By the way, Joe was on NFL Live yesterday, and he was sitting next to Saturday. Now, Jeff Saturday, who works with us and is former center, mostly for the Colts, but also a little bit with the Packers, he's probably lost like 40 pounds
since
he stopped playing.
Yeah.
He looked like a JV high school player next
and
to Joe
by
Thomas.
the way, Joe Thomas is not your biggest offensive lineman out there. He's not that 320, 330 pounder. He never was that guy. He was just great.
Yeah, no, he is just great. I want to ask Joe what it's like to have your feet not touch the ground every time you kick slide. I've yet to watch tape where he's actually on earth, so it must be a pretty unique feeling there.
Gotta love watching as an old lineman.
Oh my God, we used to turn him on all the time. It was incredible. He's the greatest.
And because
turn
of
him
on
the tape. Yeah, no, not in
you were watching
his
work.
Let's be clear.
Yeah, no, watching his work, not watching him work.
Let's parse our words carefully. The other thing too about him is he looks so big and he really can't do a lot of lifting because of the injury he's got.
Exactly right.
The torn tricep. I mean, they can't really slam weights if you got a torn tricep.
Makes it difficult.
Can lift the microphone to his face though, and he's been doing that a lot this offseason.
Well.
And listen, he's
a little too well.
Yeah.
Maybe keep playing football, Joe. You're just a better version of me in almost every facet, so we don't need you around here yet.
I didn't want to bring it up. By the way, we're now on ESPN2 as the conclusion of the Australian Open coverage has. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? Concluded.
That's what we were just waiting for that before we got off the top, right, to get on ESPN2.
There we go. Herm Edwards will join us as well, and best-selling author James Patterson will join us in the 9 o'clock hour about the new book he's written. But we have, as always, a lot to get into, so let's start with...
It's time for... Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not,
it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start in the NBA, and we start with LeBron James. Let's do good first.
Yeah.
Became the youngest player in NBA history to reach 30,000 career points, but the struggles continued for the Cavs as they lost for the 10th time, Mike, in their last 13 games.
Yeah, they stink right now. But LeBron,
what are you saying?
As far as 30,000 points, 33 years old, 24 days, youngest player, but fourth youngest by games. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar all did it in less games. But again, LeBron, the youngest to do that. He would need his career average is 27 points a game. He would need to play at least 309 more games to reach Kareem as the all-time leading scorer. He is 33 years old, so even if you knocked it down to 25 points a game, he would need 335 games. If he did all that, it basically would happen in his 19th season in this year, in the 2021-22 season. His 19th year is where he could possibly do it. So the good first here with him, I mean, what are you going to say? It was just a matter of time, and now the question will he be around the way he's playing now and the way he feels? You almost think like, yeah, he could do that for a few more years.
I'd be interested, too, what the assist totals look like for everyone else on that list. You wonder where LeBron sits, because as he's the first to point out to you, he is a pass-first guy for the most part. He's been called, I remember Greeny used to call him the best point guard in the NBA each and every season, and so what that looks like relative to the other people who were such capable scorers on this list.
The guys ahead of him as far as games were Wilt and Kareem, so I think we know the assists there, and Michael Jordan, who obviously assisted more than those guys did.
That's still a great list. So that's the good news for LeBron. We had his Instagram post that he did before. We'll get into that a little later.
Yeah, sure.
And then, of course, there's the team in general. After the game, head coach Ty Lue says he's going to make changes in the lineup. We'll get to that a little bit.
Yeah.
But something has to change.
It's bad right now, and Ty Lue had just said he's not making changes, but then after the meeting they had, he expected a little more, well, if you guys are going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk, and they didn't, so he said, okay, we're time to shift things around a little bit.
They were comically bad at times last night.
Yep.
Like, bad news bears bad. Isaiah Thomas, we can call it the hip and everything else.
Awful.
He is a full-on liability on the court. J.R. Smith, no points in 28 minutes last night. They're not getting any production from guys that they are leaving on the court for that amount of time. I mean, Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade looked pretty good last night. You have to imagine that they're going to be the part of some of the change that goes on.
Well, that's the issue. Remember, J.R. Smith started on the bench with Dwayne Wade starting, and J.R. kind of pouted. Now J.R. Smith has said, okay, if you want me to go to the bench, I'll go to the bench. I mean, he even knows he's not playing well. So it could be that and Dwayne Wade starting. It could be Tristan Thompson starting, kick Love out to forward. Jay Crowder goes on the bench. So we'll see what moves are going to be.
I think more than anything else, J.R. Smith needs to start playing without a shirt.
There you go.
That's when he's in his natural habitat.
Shirts and skins.
His natural environment. They should play every game shirts and skins, and the Cavs should always be skins. And magically, J.R. Smith will hit everything that he hoists up there.
Off the top.
All right, we continue with Off the Top. 3 days after attempting a Big 12 record 39 shots, Oklahoma freshman Trae Young attempted a season-low 9 shots last night. But the 12th-ranked Sooners knocked off 5th-ranked Kansas 85-80, the first road loss of the year for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, Oklahoma coach Lon Kruger said he wanted a more efficient game from Young. So, as you mentioned, 9 shots, 4 in the first half, all from inside the arc. Still finished with, 26 points in this game. So it was more efficient for him. And even Trey said, you're going to see a different part of me here. I'm not going to just be hoisting up shots, and it showed.
Scored or assisted on 58% of Oklahoma's points in that night, and that's a good point. The coach wanted a more efficient game, and now that's one of those that the coach goes back after in film and says, now I know you can do this, so do it all the time is the challenge for a guy that is so great in so many ways. You're just trying as a coach to fine-tune that. You're chipping away and trying to chisel all of that talent into the best version.
That reminds me of a great story that Bob Knight told about the 84 Olympic team that had Jordan, and he knew they were going to win. They were so loaded. So at one game in the tournament, they were up by 20 at the half, and Knight was just ticked. He was ticked off. He started screaming, blah, blah, blah. And he turned to Jordan and said, Jordan, are you going to set one bleep-a-bleep screen in this entire Olympic tournament? When are you going to start setting? This is ridiculous. You're the best player out there. You're not setting one screen for the rest of your teammates. And Jordan looked at him and said, Coach, I'm setting the screens, but they're just so fast you can't see them.
Yeah.
So everybody always tries to get that little thing that motivates him.
Right.
Bob tried it on Mike, and Mike was having none of it at that time.
Off the top.
Meanwhile, the NBA All-Star reserves were announced Tuesday with Draymond Green and Klay Thompson joining Steph Curry and Kevin Durant in the game. That makes the Warriors the first team in NBA history to have 4 All-Stars in consecutive seasons.
Pretty impressive, and Russell Westbrook was pretty ticked about that. He kind of alluded to that as his teammate Paul George was left off the All-Star list. Interesting that Oladipo got on. Victor Oladipo, who was traded for Paul George, made the All-Star team. Interesting note, LaMarcus Aldridge is an All-Star selection. It makes it the 20th straight season the Spurs have had an All-Star, the longest streak by any team since the merger, and by far the longest active streak. The next team are the Thunder, with Westbrook making it this year. That gives that franchise 9 straight. So you go from 20 to 9 straight. So the Spurs just kicking out the All-Stars. You had the subs as Paul George, a snub, Lou Williams, Andre Drummond. We could talk about that as well. But the big thing here is Golden State gets 4 for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, Andre Drummond averaging a cool 15 rebounds a game right now. One of the best defensive players in the league.
30 double-doubles leaving the Eastern Conference, and he took to Twitter as well.
I was about to say he took it well.
Yeah,
very well. Yeah, four-letter word Twitter was having a field day over there. But the first-timers, it's interesting. So you have Victor Oladipo, you had Bradley Beal, the backcourt mate of John Wall there in D.C., and then two guys that we talk about as sort of these future stars at the big man spot that's constantly evolving in Karl Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis that were both named to this list. Guys that really fit into that same mold and we constantly debate going forward, along with Joel Embiid, is where do these guys fit and how do they affect the new world order of the NBA?
Porzingis, the only player from a team this year from a losing team. The only one. If Drummond would have made it, Detroit has a losing record as well. That would have been other, but Porzingis the only one.
Well, again, real quickly, Drummond's first quote was, "You got to be effing kidding me," basically on Twitter. And then he said, "Guess I got to start doing backflips after every point I score to get my attention around here." LMAO, on to the next. So it's all good because I did an LMAO. It's all good. We move on.
It would be cool if he did backflips after everything. Now
maybe
people
would
listen.
Yeah.
I would vote him onto the All-Star game if he did that. If he did a backflip after every point, I would put him on. I would make sure he got on there. Back to the Warriors, though. Those 4 Warriors have been protecting leads all season. Protecting the lead is brought to you by ADT. Considering home security, consider this. For over 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security company. Visit ADT.com to learn more.
Off the top.
And we finish up off the top with the 2018 Baseball Hall of Fame class unveiled today. Chipper Jones, Vlad Guerrero, and Jim Thome pretty certain to be in.
Yeah.
Trevor Hoffman, Edgar Martinez also have a pretty good shot. And then we get into this area of the steroid users continuing to have that debate.
Yeah, so again, back to the top, Chipper Jones and Jim Thome, first-timers that look like they're going to get in. Vlad last year had just under 72%. Again, you need 75%, so it looks good for him. Trevor Hoffman last year had 74%. He just missed it. Edgar Martinez is going to be that one. We talk about punters or specialists in the NFL Hall of Fame. We talk about DH, in the Baseball Hall of Fame, where Edgar Martinez, and that vote. And as you mentioned, then it's Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. Roger, they're both trended up last year. Clemens just over 54% and Bonds just under 54%. Again, you need 75%. I've always been on record saying if you're Hall of Fame worthy, you get voted in Hall of Fame. Steroids, not steroids, whatever. You vote them in. You want to put something in there that designates that. Okay, whatever. But I think eventually these guys will get in. It's their 6th year, I believe, and they get 10 before you go to the senior.
Yeah.
Where they got no shot basically to go in for that vote. So they got a few more years on this. I think they eventually get in.
The veterans
committee.
You're over halfway through that 10-year window. I don't know how I feel about that because at this point it seems pretty set in stone. I understand it's improved incrementally. I saw our ESPN.com, our voters put this up. It was 6 out of 10 of them voted for these guys. That still falls below the threshold, but it just seems like such an unnecessary distraction at this point to have to keep talking about guys that we all know are good enough and should be in there, especially based on their era, detracting from the other people that are going to get in the Hall of Fame on this that end up becoming footnotes to another conversation about steroids.
There's a lot to get into there, and we will do it later on because look, at no point did you watch those guys and think they weren't among the best that they did, and then you have to have a discussion with yourself and an honest discussion with yourself about who's in there now and some of the things that happened when they were playing that allowed them to compete at a very high level. Right. So, that's a whole discussion we'll get into a little bit later on in the show. By the way, one of our fine tennis hosts, Chris McHenry, who runs is texting us. Make sure you guys talk about Roger Federer. I'm like, we did. Chris, just so you know, we just did. We took care of that for you.
Tell her to tune in to the show.
Well, I don't know if we get the show in Australia. Australia radio, I'm not sure.
They have TVs down under.
Well, I know they have ours.
See, there you go.
So McHenry, we did it. Just so you know, we did that for you. And because he was deserving of going for his 20.
Yes, he was.
Okay, speaking of deserving, obviously LeBron James gets all the credit he deserves for 30,000 points, as you said, as fast in terms of age-wise as anybody, youngest of all time. But the bigger issue is they still lost. And this team is an absolute mess right now. And it seems like finally Mike Tyronn Lue, who just a few days ago was saying, I'm not going to make changes, is now ready to make all kinds of changes.
Yeah, he is. I think a lot of it came from that meeting where he thought he'd get a little more oomph from guys kind of airing everything out. But as one player from the Cavs told ESPN, everybody wants accountability, but nobody actually wants to be held accountable.
Now, that seems like deep thoughts with Jack Haney.
It does.
Say that one again.
Everybody wants accountability, but nobody actually wants to be held accountable. He wanted to say the crazy thing is it still feels correctable. Said another player from the old guard faction of the roster, there is no trust out there on the court. This is the worst it's been. So
isn't everyone on a roster that averages 31 years of age kind of part of the old guard?
Let's look at but to that point, it's pretty easy. So that's got to be J.R. Smith, LeBron, Kevin Love,
Dwayne Wade.
No, he's just there this year, though. I mean, when they say the veteran,
old
roster,
old faction of that, an old guard faction.
Tristan Thompson, Amon Shumpert.
Roster,
I mean, it's got to be one of those guys, right? That's been around for a while.
And that would have context of what it's been like there in Cleveland, where all we hear is that there's always apparently been a culture of finger pointing that's gone on there. So maybe they've succeeded in spite of that. I'm not sure.
You don't know if this is just one of those where every year you just get a different team together just to try and win it, and you have LeBron James. So you have a shot. You have your couple of players that are your consistent pieces each year, and then you just kind of build around it. And I would imagine year in, year out, it's hard to build chemistry, but you always say, let's get to the playoffs. We have LeBron. We're going to be in the finals. And this is the year. I think I'm one of the last ones holding on to the thought that they can still pull it off. Oh, by the way, though, the Boston Celtics have lost 4 games in a row.
Right.
It's not like they're setting the world on fire right now either.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because we're so focused on LeBron because he's made it to 7 straight finals, and the Cleveland Cavaliers have made it to 3 straight NBA finals. Obviously, and he's the brightest star in the NBA universe still to this day. So our glare does go there. But you're right, the team that we all think, and I'll say it, I'm kind of guilty of that too, because of the way I think they play defense at a much higher level than the Cavs at this point. We tend to say, they've lost 4 in a row. Yeah, they'll get it right. And yet we dissect every little thing that comes out, including LeBron's Instagram posts, when it happens with him. There are different dynamics and different lenses through which we look at certain things.
Well, and I think when you bring up the Celtics and that with defense, the one reason we always bring up those defense that wins championships mantras are because at the very least, defense is going to give you extra possessions.
Right.
And if you're a team like the Cavaliers right now, what did they make their hay with last year when they were succeeding really well? That was a top 5 team in almost every 3-point shooting metric that you had last year, whether it was attempts, makes, or field goal percentage from 3. And this year, especially percentage-wise, they're down. So what would help you? More looks at that. And what are you not getting because your defense is more porous? You're not getting more possessions and more looks, and you're definitely not getting production from some of those guys, J.R. Smith and company, that you've come to expect it from, at least in certain moments.
It's a great point about the three-pointers, and to that point, the Cavs were 6 of 21 on threes on Tuesday. They ranked dead last in the NBA in three-point percentage since Christmas. And by just 31%.
And by the way, that's a great point he made about the three-pointers, and to your point, it was on point.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. There's no other way to say it. One of the ugliest chapters in the history of sport in the world may be coming to a close today in Lansing, Michigan, as Larry Nassar, the former trainer with the USA Gymnastics, will be sentenced today in court as after the 7th day of a remarkable hearing where over 150 victims stood up and testified to the sexual abuse that they suffered at his hands when he was performing what they thought would be treatments under the guise of a doctor. It has been ugly. It has been awful. It has been everything you hate to see. It has been everything you never want to hear about as a parent when it's your child. And the fact that these numbers continue to grow is absolutely astounding when you talk about 150 people have come in and testified in this court case. The things that Larry Nassar did to them. He will be sentenced today in Wednesday in court to his sentence. He's facing a ridiculous number of charges, and we'll see how that all plays out. And that's the criminal side of it.
Right.
And now, Mike, the NCAA has begun an investigation into Michigan State on the handling of Larry Nassar's case because Larry was working at Michigan State while all of this was going on. And a lot of people are wondering, okay, we saw the NCAA get involved in Penn State with the Jerry Sandusky scandal, which by sheer numbers, this dwarfs that one in comparison. That we know of. Let's be clear about that. And the NCAA waded into those waters, and they've sort of had to walk back some of the penalties, and some people thought it was a little clumsy about them getting involved in really a criminal matter. And R.J. Billis was interviewed by Bob Lee on Outside the Lines, and he believes the NCAA should not get involved here.
Given the action that was taken, Bob, in the Penn State matter, many people believe that it should be. I am not one of those. I think the NCAA acted outside the scope of its authority in the Penn State case and should not have acted in that regard. And the legacy of the NCAA action in the Penn State matter is that it is unlikely going forward that any institution will investigate itself, because the NCAA used the free report against Penn State as a weapon to do whatever it chose and whatever it saw fit that was outside of the scope of its rules and its system. The NCAA does not govern criminal matters. As tragic and as horrifying as this is, the NCAA cannot be involved in these types of issues. It just doesn't work. And the association put itself in a bad position with the actions it took in Penn State.
Look, Jay Billis is one of the most thoughtful and knowledgeable guys when it comes to the relationship with college sports and the NCAA. And I think he makes a very interesting and compelling point about wading into waters that perhaps are outside not only your area of expertise and interest, but really that should not maybe perhaps involve you in the first place. What are your thoughts on this?
I thought this was interesting. Mike, I want you to go. I heard you talking about it this morning because it got into the cultural aspect of it as well. This with what happened in Penn State and how they got involved, and I think clumsy is a good word at times. Where do you sit on this?
It becomes interesting to me because I think Jay is right in that regard. When you look at what the NCAA is tasked with policing, it's not criminal matters like this, but much like the NFL, you've boxed yourself into a corner now to where his point about Mark Emmert failing to have any comments for what's going on in the sexual abuse scandal seems insane because you've already established you deal in this stuff now. You deal in punishing for these kind of acts the way the NFL did when it started assigning numbers to domestic violence cases as far as suspension and trying to regulate in that area clumsily at the beginning, but to a point now where you get to what happened with Zeke Elliott this offseason where the picture is less clear, but you're forced to punish to the full extent of the law because that's where you've put yourself in. And now while I agree that that is probably not the case, that just this should be left to the court, what I disagree with what Jay and Bob Lee said, and this was part of their larger conversation, was that this isn't a gymnastics culture problem, or Penn State wasn't a football culture problem. I don't know how you can say that, because while these were evil people, they were singular forces, they were allowed to exist, and the reason that their crimes were so far-reaching is because they went unchecked when there were warning signs that were put out there. When people tried to wave a flag and say something is going on here, people that had a vested interest, that had a stake in the way that the system operated with this guy as a part of it, failed to do anything because the priority was the goal in that particular sport, in that particular field. And that, to me, screams culture. That's saying this is what we prioritize in this space. This is what we want to show you is important to us. That, to me, sounds like culture. So to say that that's not an issue is troubling. So how we regulate it, because Michigan State's getting sued, USA Gymnastics is getting sued. The court of law will take care of that. But what do we come out here and say the day that all of this really started? We need to examine this process so that we can make sure it never happens again. Well, when you've got guys on the trustee board for Michigan State like Joel Ferguson basically belittling this process, saying that there are way more things going on at Michigan State than this Nassar thing, that this isn't Penn State, they were dealing with the football program. They know
like that matters.
That is just horrifically.
That's so tone deaf. Yeah. It's beyond the pale.
And I don't want to make it sound like that's some unanimous position that the Michigan State board has taken. Mitch Lyons, who's also on that board, disagreed, and in his account of the meeting that involved the discussion of whether President Simon should step down or not at the university, said that he believed President Simon can't survive this. And even if Joel Ferguson's point about not wanting to part ways with his president because of everything else she's done, pointing out that they've got a great new basketball arena or all this stuff, that stuff is callous. The way that you framed this is horrific. Even if your point is, we think we have a capable leader who can maybe see us through this. But the way that you've showed us you view this is, no, we just prioritize these other things more. No, this just isn't comparatively as important as football, as basketball, and everything else. These people mean less to us is the way that is read to me and the way that other people have read that. So now I don't know how I'm supposed to have faith that the culture around there can support a place, or in other instances, this is not saying Michigan State's unique, but that we won't see instances like this pop up on a loop forever as long as we just keep saying, no, these are singular forces at work. We can't stop them.
So then the question comes down to is then what do we do so it doesn't happen again? See, I'm like, I have that thought process. I saw what happened at Penn State, and you saw what happened here. And my thought is, anybody that can nail them, nail them. If the school is complicit, nail them. Nail them all, but then you have to kind of take a breath and say, wait a minute. Is this where the NCAA should be going? Should they be delving into this? This isn't, taking a handout of money. We're taking some shoes. But then there are those that are going to say, yeah, it's not. It's way worse. It's way worse. So why are you taking yourself out of that one and just leaving it up to the law? And right now, the law is they're being sued. It's like nobody from Michigan State, which was unlike Penn State where others got prosecuted. Nobody else, at least from what I understand, at Michigan State is being prosecuted. They're being sued. I don't know if anybody else, you were looking at jail time for anybody else like we did at Penn State. I want them to get in as much trouble as humanly possible, but you do have to take the pause and say, should that come from the NCAA?
Well, and you have to say what's helpful, because this was the other thing that I thought was an interesting corollary to the domestic violence policy, because I remember Sarah Spain and a lot of other people that did a great job in covering the NFL's stance on domestic violence is often the way it goes about. So punishing the abusers in a lot of instances, especially in cases where it is a spouse that's close to them, will actually be detrimental in the long run for people being willing to come forward and report these acts of violence. And so in this instance, I know Jay's point was also, if you've got the NCAA that's going to come over and beat you over the head for this kind of stuff, are schools less likely to self-investigate into things like this? Are they less likely to look inward and say, oh no, we've got a problem and we've got to fix this, if they're worried about sanctions and things that are going to affect their bottom line? Because again, we understand what their priority is, apparently.
Well, look, it's not just Michigan State. One of the reasons that Nassar is facing 125 years in jail is because there were 125 police reports filed.
Yeah.
125 police reports filed before finally some action was taking place here. So I want to say, to your point, I'm with you 100%. Whatever can be hammered against those that enabled or allowed this should be there. The question becomes, is that something that the NCAA should be involved with, or is that something that carries a much bigger penalty, criminal situations? Should we let those people handle that situation?
But even that punishment can only accomplish so much, right? Because again, if someone's punished, that allows you to look over and say they were the problem.
Right.
They were it. And that's the reason I dispute the idea that culture is not involved in this. Because what do we talk about in a completely different sense with the Cavs locker room? There's no accountability there. You've got no one from the top down. You've got disputes over where to take accountability. People are less likely to say, this was my part in this. This is how I want to be a part of fixing this. And so as long as you give someone an object that they can point to and say, no, you were wrong.
But don't you need something? I mean, listen, you need somebody or a group of people to say, okay, we're trying to find out where this happened. You people were in charge. You people got to go, or your school's got to get hammered.
That's happening right now in USA Gymnastics. And everybody has resigned.
And you need that to happen, but you need everyone in the system to self-examine, or else this stuff still has a space to happen. And however small it starts, if you give it room to grow, which is what happens when you've got a culture like that doesn't self-assess and is always looking to say, and this happens with sexism, with racism, with all of these different things, if you're unwilling to own your part in the whole machine, then all you do is allow it to happen because it means you're willing to ignore.
So real quickly, because the NCAA got involved in Penn State, do they have to get involved here?
I feel like they have to.
That they put themselves in the box to get involved here?
Does it sound like they're going to? If Mark Emmert's already not trying to go out of his way not to comment.
Well, I believe
they started an investigation.
They started an investigation.
Yeah, they started an investigation. It almost seems like they have to because of the Penn State thing.
We'll see where that leads. But again, the bottom line here is that the sentencing of Larry Nassar will be happening today in court in Lansing, Michigan.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. Mike Golick here. You know, ADT, the number one security company, can now help keep you safe at home and when you're on the go. Get started with the ADT Starter Kit professionally installed for only $49. Plus, you'll get ADT Go, the new family mobile safety app and service with 24/7 emergency response for free with any ADT security system. Go to ADT.com/podcast to learn more today.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, QSP and EasyPay. Activation and early termination fees may apply. Certain markets excluded. Licenses available at ADT.com. Additional charge for ADT Go premium services after March 31st, 2018.
We are delighted.
We just heard legs jump in on that one, didn't we?
I mean, I did the math on that. I know what a book goes for.
Mama didn't raise no dummy over there. Our NBA analyst Tim Legler joins us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Now, for those that don't have a long-term memory, they may not understand that Legs and I go way back here.
Oh, yeah.
The 1 year I did the NBA Tonight was the 2002-2003 season before I started NFL Live in summer of 2003, where I met some slappy named Golick.
Yeah.
We worked together 1 year, and we were always on like midnight or 2 a.m. on ESPN2. We got a little loopy. We got a little loopy doing those shows.
It was good times, though.
It was good fun.
Name That Import? Are you kidding me?
Name That
I
Import.
still get people that will ask me about Name That Import.
That was right when the influx of international players were coming on, and we didn't know who any of these guys were.
And he'd read 3 facts from one of their bios, and I'd have to guess who he was talking about.
Oh,
and
my
it was
gosh,
so
that's
obscure.
great.
And it only related to a foreign player.
Yeah.
And they would show a silhouette of the guy.
Yeah.
And I never knew. I literally, so I think I missed every time.
Well, I did purposely make them as vague as possible.
Yes.
That's absolutely
good times,
true.
man.
Now we have Fran Fraschilla to go over there.
Exactly right. That would be my lifeline.
That's exactly right.
We sent Jeff Goodman to wherever the balls are. We're in Lithuania, Latvia, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, so always good to see you. Always good to hang out with you again. So, yes, I do. Real quickly, we've been talking a little bit about the Cavs. First of all, people know you as a three-point shooting champ. That was your thing, 1996. Would you, in 1996, if Instagram was a thing, congratulate yourself on Instagram before you won the three-point shooting contest?
I barely use Instagram now, so I would say no. There's a good chance I wouldn't be writing letters to myself on Instagram.
I mean,
we don't have much of a problem.
When my son was in here, who's 28, so it's a different era there. Yeah. For me to not, I don't want to sound like that old guy on the porch. I think that's the era now. There's way more sometimes oversharing and over communicating, but I'm not going to sit there and lose any sleep over it. Why do you got a problem with it?
Doesn't bother me. It's the way the world operates now. It really doesn't bother me one way or another. It's funny because a lot of times I don't even pay attention to that, and until someone asks me a question on one of these formats about something that somebody tweeted or put on Instagram or whatever it may be, and then I talk about it. But for the most part, I don't pay attention to what those guys do.
No, it shouldn't be. Okay, but what does concern you and what you do pay attention to is what we're seeing out of Cleveland. And you just said something before we came on the air that I thought was pretty striking about the problems they're having, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, it's flat out a lack of effort. I mean, it's galling. It jumps out at you. Like, when you watch an NBA game most nights, you don't typically sit there and go, wow, that team's just not playing very hard. These are professional athletes. But when I watch the Cavs, that's what jumps out. It's not acceptable level of effort to beat anyone. But much less when you play teams like Oklahoma City and San Antonio and the better teams in this league. And that's what I see out of Cleveland right now. There's an erosion of trust that's going on the court because guys are getting hung out to dry defensively because there's just not effort being committed to help. So that then becomes a chain where, you don't help me, I'm not helping you, and you end up with this sieve defensively like they have. And then offensively, they've got problems too because they've got a roster full of one-dimensional players besides LeBron James. Isaiah Thomas will help when he gets right. He's not close to what he was a year ago, but the rest of their roster is made up of guys that really do one thing each. That's what separates a team like Golden State, where they've got 6 or 7 guys that do everything offensively. And so when you look at Cleveland now, they look older, slower, smaller. And on top of it, the lack of chemistry that they have, you end up with this kind of a rut, and it's more than a rut. It's something's got to change personnel wise, I believe.
It's not a great combination. One of the players on the Cavs, kind of from the old guard faction, said there just what you said. There's no trust out there on the court. It's the worst it's ever been. So they've always been able to, for lack of a better term, flip that switch when it comes playoff time. And you're saying this is more about effort than X's and O's. So again, can they just flip the switch when the playoffs come around like they have in the past?
I don't think so this year. I don't think it's effort and personnel. So now look, there's a lot of talk out there that, about George Hill potentially, maybe DeAndre Jordan. So if they make some changes that way and bring in some guys that can guard and give you a little bit of an infusion of energy and make you feel like they looked at themselves and reinvented themselves midseason, yeah, I'll say okay. They still at the end of the day have LeBron, so you're not going to write them off, but more than any year, I look at them and say, this isn't a January swoon like we talk about with this team. It's a lot more than that. Boston's going through a little bit of a January slump, a midseason thing. That's not the case with Cleveland. This has been going on for too long, and it also was the way they started the year. They masked it because they made a ton of threes for about 6 weeks, and it masked all their defensive problems because they shot the ball incredibly well. Now you're seeing them be exposed, I think, for what they really are. Where I wouldn't pick them to beat Boston right now, I'm not sure I'd pick them to beat the Toronto Raptors right now. So I'm not going to write them off because of 23, but a lot's got to change between now and the time we get to the postseason.
Tim Legler with us, our NBA analyst. Okay, so obviously they've had there's a lot to get into with Cleveland. You said if things don't change. Is there a trade to be made that can change them?
Well, look, some people might think it's a minor trade, it sounds like. You bring in a George Hill for Channing Frye and Amon Shumpert. That's a significant improvement for the Cleveland Cavaliers because, number one, George Hill plays both ends of the floor. He's a veteran. He's played in a ton of playoff games. He guards the ball. He's got length on the perimeter defensively. Right now, the guys that they have on the perimeter to guard, they're either too slow, too old, or too small. Okay,
bad combination.
It really is in basketball.
When you got all three, it's not.
Yeah, I don't know what that combination of adjectives works well in life. Yeah. I don't know, but it doesn't work well in the NBA. George Hill answers some of that. He's got good size at the point. He can guard multiple positions. He can make threes playing off of LeBron and Isaiah Thomas. It's a significant improvement, particularly when Shumpert and Channing Frye you have no use for right now. They have too many guys on that team
that do the same thing, right?
Exactly, and they're not even using them. So why not? You get rid of two guys that you're not using, bring in a guy that can help you immediately. DeAndre Jordan's name keeps getting floated out there. I don't know how serious or significant that is, and I'm not sure what they would give back in return that the Clippers would be interested in.
So as far as this team meeting that went on, you've been part of team meetings, I've been part of team meetings. Does anything in your mind really
Okay, fine. I haven't been part of a team meeting. Thanks, Mike.
Trey's been involved.
You know what? We'll invite you to the next team meeting.
Trey's been involved in
I'll be the one that everyone blames, right?
See,
I'll be the guy.
Here's the difference.
I'll be your Kevin Love.
Here's the difference of sports team meetings and what meetings you've been involved in family meetings where you have no say.
Correct.
In a sports team meeting, does anything really get done? Or as I've seen a lot of times, other things that the intent of the meeting wasn't supposed to be for get brought up, and sometimes things get even worse.
You know, honestly, I wonder if you ever had this experience. The only team meetings I was ever a part of that actually had an impact on the way we played from when we left that room were when collectively you didn't really like the head coach. And so you come to a determination you're going to play in spite of him. And you rally around this commonality that we don't think we're being led the right way. We don't like the guy. So let's go out there and do it.
Band together.
Let's do it for us. Right. In that situation, I've actually seen it work. And I've actually, all the years I've coached at AAU and those teams I had, there were times I tried to become a jerk to them so that they would get mad enough at me that they would play in spite of me. So sometimes that can work. But for the most part, when you go in there and you start talking about specific players in that room who are sitting there, and front office is in the room, the head coach is there, I think that's a formula for disaster. So I was really surprised at the way they handled it. Clearly, not a lot got done because last night
the results were pretty much the same.
They were sleepwalking again up and down the floor. I mean, this team changes ends like they are in a preseason second practice of a two-a-day. They have no urgency whatsoever to get back and make teams actually have to work to score against them.
So how do you, because that I find that fascinating, because LeBron is seen as this, and you're not pointing at LeBron specifically, but he's part of this team. He's seen as the ultimate competitor, the ultimate warrior, the guy who works out constantly. I mean, he's chiseled out of granite at this point when you look at the way he's put together. How can someone get them to try harder?
It's a good question. And, I've actually done a couple of touchscreens, and one of them really specifically focused on LeBron. It was in a Toronto game, and his lack of effort getting back and leading that way. And I think what happens is, for a guy like LeBron, who's one of the elite defenders in this league, when he's locked in, it's almost like he's going, what difference does it make? And the problem is, when it's coming from him, now you've got a serious issue because there's no accountability anywhere anymore. At least LeBron, when he's locked in and setting the example himself, he can make guys a lot more accountable. And right now, it's everybody on that team. And the guys that are playing hard, they're not athletic enough to impact the game defensively. So, but they still care, but it's just not going to matter. So, it's an absolute mess. Teron alluded last night there's going to be changes made to the starting lineup, and they asked me to do that on SportsCenter today. Who would you start? I looked at their team, and I went, I'd start Mark Price. I'd start Ron Harper. I'd start Brad Doherty.
So this is a different.
If you could get Larry Nance and roll him back in his prime, I'd get him.
Craig Elo.
Yeah. John Hot Rod Williams. You name it. Okay.
World be free?
Right, exactly.
Let's go. Let's go completely old school.
Austin Carr, if you want, okay?
Let's go.
We'll keep going back as far as you want, baby. But I looked at their lineup and I went, I don't know. Right now, the way they're playing is much more significant than who they're
playing. Gotcha.
So that's what it comes down to for me.
So in the long run of this, for Cleveland fans out there of the Cleveland Cavaliers, me being one of them, being from Cleveland, who have tried to shield off the LeBron is leaving, and I would say LeBron wants to win championships, and to do that you have to get to the championship, and Cleveland's still his best chance. If it were to just fall apart and they don't even make the championship this year, is it a complete foregone conclusion? You think he'll be gone then?
I think he could be. I think regardless what happens.
You do.
And, I've never seen, personally, a roster constructed in such a way that one free agent affects the team the way he does. Because you think about this, they don't have a single player on their team that is part of their future.
Wow.
Think about it. That's the scariest thing in the world.
Which is why they're holding on to that number one pick of Brooklyn.
Right. If LeBron leaves, then Isaiah Thomas isn't worth it to them. Look at the rest of their team. They're all guys that complement one player. If LeBron James leaves, they are literally hitting the reset button and going nuclear like you haven't seen, and then hoping that pick turns into a franchise player. But it's looking more and more like that won't be a top 3 pick, and who knows what that could end up being. So it's going to be fascinating to watch what happens with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But right now, Boston, to me, is the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference, and Cleveland has plenty of time to change my mind.
Tim Legler with us, NBA analyst in studio. We'll get to the All-Star reserves and the mounting problems in San Antonio in about 30 seconds, Mike, but first.
Dollar Shave Club not only gives you an amazing shave, but they also make products for your hair, face, skin, shower, everything you need, and it's all their own original stuff. They got you covered head to toe. And right now, you can get your first month of their best razor along with travel-size versions of shave butter, body cleanser, and other great products for just $5. After that, replacement cartridges ship for just a few bucks a month. It's the DSC starter set for $5 exclusively at dollarshaveclub.com/Golic. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Golic.
Okay, so Tim Legler still with us in studio. We always look at the All-Stars, and there's always the guys that made it that you were a little shocked at, and then the snubs. Biggest snub for you on the All-Star reserves, who do you think it was? Was it Andre Drummond?
I'm going to be honest with you. This is the first year. This is by far, in the 17 years I've been here, the closest it's been to absolutely 100% accurate.
Really?
If there's one guy I would have liked to see make it, was Goran Dragic. So who comes off then? You have to have that answer. I would say it was a toss-up between he and Kyle Lowry. I think Kyle Lowry's name and reputation and Toronto having a better record really helped him. But look at Miami, being 6-7 games, whatever they are, over 500, the way they started the year. Goran Dragic is their best offensive player. I thought he should have got more consideration. Out west, Lou Williams, no question, has a strong case to be made. But if he makes it, who comes off? Do you say, one of the two Warriors guys? Is it Clay or Draymond Green? Do you take one of them off the team for Lou Williams? I can't make that case. So maybe they just need more spots in the West. In the East, that's the only, to me, toss-up was Dragic and Kyle Lowry.
So no Drummond, you didn't think?
No.
Drummond leading the league in rebounds and most
even
double-doubles?
Even if he did those backflips after every point?
I really mad on
because
Twitter
overall,
as well.
to me, that team is pretty disappointing most nights because I think they've got better talent than the record indicates.
Again, only one player on both rosters comes from a losing team, and that's Porzingis.
And by the way, this is the first time since I've been here that they got all 10 starters right.
You think all 10? So not only the reserves you like, but you like all 10 starters.
Those are absolutely the right 10 guys. And,
wow.
And that never
happens. That's the
happens.
Tim Legler seal of approval.
Good
right
job
there.
out of them. All right, so we're talking about Cleveland. If LeBron leaves and then there's no future player on that team, a team that has been able to just keep doing it year after year after year is the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah.
Now, is there a little riff with Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich? And also that roster is old. I mean, it is old. The players that they count on are old. So are we possibly looking at a big turnover in San Antonio very soon?
I think it's a little bit overblown right now. I've been surprised at the whole thing when people talk about a riff and a disconnection and Kawhi Leonard's unhappy. And I go, well, how can you tell? The guy doesn't speak.
He doesn't.
Like, I don't, how do you know Kawhi Leonard's upset? I'm really curious about that.
We're body language. We're observing.
Right.
We're feeling it out.
His right eyebrow went up slightly. I think he's not really feeling it. I don't know. Greg Popovich tried to downplay it last night. I think there's more truth in what Greg Popovich had to say than what this story has sort of turned into. Kawhi Leonard has always seemed like a guy to me that is going to play his entire career in San Antonio. I'd be very happy doing it. He's that rare guy that totally buys into what they're all about. Now you're right about some of their veteran guys moving on here, but you drafted DeJounte Murray at the end of the first round. Right. He's going to be your next point guard. LaMarcus Aldridge is still in his prime. Obviously Kawhi is one of the best players in the game. So they still have enough to rejuvenate. And they're filling the piece role players around that. Greg Popovich has always been amazing at finding guys, getting the most out of them. I don't think San Antonio's going away anytime soon. And I honestly think this story with Kawhi Leonard is going to go away completely once he gets back on the court and starts doing his thing every night.
All right, so then there's the idea of Jason Kidd out in Milwaukee after 4 years. They've got one of the young, absolute superstars in the league locked up to I think, the next 3 years. Giannis is there. How good is that job in Milwaukee?
Well, here's the thing. You obviously have a player like Antetokounmpo that makes you excited as a head coach, right? Because he checks.
And there's other talent on that roster.
There is, absolutely. I mean, you've got Brogdon there. They just picked up Bledsoe.
Right.
Thon Maker's a great role player that can defend all over the floor. Jabari Parker's going to come back. Chris Middleton is averaging 20 points a game. There's a lot there, but Antetokounmpo, is obviously the linchpin. He checks off every box. Problem is, are you going to ever be able to get and recruit a big-time free agent to come to Milwaukee to play with Antetokounmpo? That's the challenge that the Bucks face. And that's not a knock on the city or the organization. It's just a fact. You don't hear the Bucks come up in the summer when guys are on these free agent tours, do you? I mean, every year there's 2 or 3 guys, and they go make their 4 or 5 visits, and we cover it every single day, and they're the big names in the game when their deals are up. You don't hear Milwaukee come up in that. And there's 6, 8 other cities that never get mentioned.
Can Minnesota come up in that?
See, I think Minnesota's a lot closer because they've got more than one good player.
Right.
And they've got a coach now that I think guys would want to play for because you're buying in that they're going somewhere special. But there are a lot of cities in this league that are in the same boat. You have to draft perfectly when you get those high picks. And then the hardest part, can you re-sign them after their 4th year?
Right.
Like Philly's going to find this out with some of their young talent. Are they going to be able to keep those guys long term? It's one thing to draft them. It's another thing to keep them. And Milwaukee's going to be in that boat. So, yes, their talent gets you excited, but sometimes it's going to take adding that big-time player in the summertime to really get you over the top, and I don't know if they'll be able to do that.
All right, so there's not hope for Cleveland, according to Tim Legler, but he thinks that, barring a miraculous change, you think Boston might be the team that comes out of
Yes, a stat that I saw the other day really blew me away, which is this. They've beaten the top 6 teams in the league in their building. They're 6-0. None of those teams have gotten to 100 points.
And choking with defense, yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that's sustainable. It's like a strong running game and stopping the run in football. Yeah. If you can keep people down, you can hold home court. Boston, right now, to me, would be the favorite.
Legs, as always.
Thanks,
good
Leg.
to see you.
All right, guys.
Appreciate you stopping by.
Good to be here.
The great Tim Legler, ladies and gentlemen. One of the great mullets of all time.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
This guy, Browns left tackle Joe Thomas, in studio giving us a Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. By the way, we're going to have a Twitter view with Joe, so keep your questions on Twitter, the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Submit your questions, and we'll have those a little bit later. But, we're talking about all the struggles with the Cavs.
Yes, we are.
And what they need to do right.
Yeah.
Just have Joe play. That probably would fix everything.
Joe, have you ever played basketball?
I did in high school. I was a basketball guy. I
Use your fouls well.
Yeah, I actually thought basketball was going to be my sport because when I was 14, I'm 6'7", 220 pounds.
Right.
But then I stopped growing up and just started growing out, and it turned into football.
I still think you could turn around the Cavs right now. I think we get Joe.
Yeah.
Hashtag get Joe to the Cavs.
I'm going to say
start it trending.
Hand in the dirt worked a little better.
Yeah, it was a little bit better career path for me.
It's worked out well for you. And look, Mike's son played offensive line in college. My son played offensive line in college. So we marveled at the 10,000 consecutive snaps. And people, I don't think people that don't really understand football understand the significance of that streak, which obviously ended with the torn tricep. But, I mean, a broken shoelace could have taken you off the field for a snap. I mean, now that it's sort of something that you can look back at, do you marvel at all how you were able to do that for 10,000, 39, I think, consecutive snaps on the field?
When I think back to everything, it's not the injuries that I was able to avoid. It's those weird things, like you mentioned.
Right.
The shoe falls off. You're laying there and you get a cramp in your hamstring or your calf. Or they just pull you out for a play because you're winning in the game and they don't want you to get hurt at the end of a game that is yeah,
There's a joke there that I won't make, Joe.
Yeah. There wasn't many of those blowouts in my career, but there was at least one time. But yeah, it is amazing that I think a lot of luck kind of did go into that streak.
So now that you're rehabbing an injury that cost you time on the field for the first time in that situation, forgetting the physical part of it, you're a football player. You've had other injuries that you've had to rehab. What did that do to you mentally?
Well, during the season, there was a lot of ups and downs watching my team from the sideline, watching them at practice, not being fully part of the team. One part of me said, well, this is fun being a fan where I can really enjoy Sundays watching my team and I can cheer and I can go through that emotional roller coaster that a fan goes through that as a player you try to avoid because that negatively affects your game preparation and your focus when you're sitting on the sideline. But then there is times when you're standing there and you're saying, man, I really know I could help my team right now and I wish I was out there. But right now I'm just kind of enjoying the rehab process. I was able to sort of ramp things up as of last week after I saw the doctor and he said things are going well. So as far as the rehab process goes, I'm feeling pretty good about things.
And where does that put you in your mind about going forward and continuing to play?
Yeah, I haven't really been able to come to a decision yet because I want to be 100% one way or the other. I've watched a lot of professional football players especially think that they're ready to retire and they retire and then they unretire and they go back and forth and they waffle. And I just want to be sure one way or the other before I make an announcement because for me, it's going to be a final announcement. I don't feel like the type of person that's going to waffle back and forth.
We want that announcement right now. Yeah. We want it right now on Golic and Wingo. You must tell us.
A couple things about that. Do you, and I think I know the answer to this as far as a day, but a kind of a timetable on when once you can start training full go on how long that would go on before you kind of know?
As far as like being healthy with the elbow?
Yeah,
or?
whether you're going to come back or not. I mean, do you have a timetable on from your perspective, the team perspective on when you want to?
Yeah, I definitely want to give them an answer before free agency starts, before the draft, because I think it's important for them just for this season. Obviously, I'm 33 years old. I'm going into the final season of my contract. So they're going to have to prepare for a new left tackle much sooner rather than later, whether it's this year or the following year. So it's not like they have no plans at my position, but I think they just want to know for this year's makeup of the team whether I'm going to be there or not.
And one thing, I know you're married. We met your wife down in Orlando, and Trey and I are married, and we all know how it works that we don't run the house. The wives do. So what's your wife's input on this?
Yeah.
Is she completely, this is up to you, or what is her offering in this?
She's been pushing me to retire for about 7 years now. So she's like, this
so
football thing is great.
Yeah,
So clearly I have at least 51% of the vote on whether I come back or not. But the rest of things, I'm only a 49%er in the household, as you guys know. But I think for me, it's making the right decision for everybody that's involved. But as I've kind of whittled the reasons to come or to go down, I think for me it's going to really be just the health of my body. Can I survive another season? I've had 4 knee surgeries since I started playing in college, and I've got a bad back. So it's really those injuries more than the elbow that would cause me to not be able to play another
I think that's
season.
what people need to realize
Right.
is the injury that cost you snaps. Some may think that's your only injury.
Right.
There are other
Yeah.
injuries, so the wear
Yeah.
and tear on your body
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the years. Yeah.
So this year I had my elbow surgery. Year before I had knee surgery. Year before that I had knee surgery. So there's not much left you could take out of this knee anymore to make it better. So yeah, really that's been kind of the thing that's been hampering me in my last 3 or 4 years more than anything.
Well, look, whatever your decision is, we want you to be at peace with it.
Yep.
But, you said your wife is 0 for 7. Maybe make her go 0 for 16. Just throwing that out there.
That's just
sorry.
horrible.
I'm sorry.
Wow,
It's a horrible
that's hurtful.
joke.
That's hurtful.
The producers made me do it.
Wow.
I'll stick to that, even though that's not true. Okay, so let's move away from what you're going to do, and let's talk about the Browns. Obviously, you have said you wanted to be there for the turnaround. You've been an unbelievably professional player when it comes to this. As our old teammate here, Mark Starr, used to say, just because you get paid doesn't mean you're a pro. You've been a pro's pro throughout your entire career. So now let's put you on the spot. Browns have the 1st and 4th overall picks. You're your new GM, John Dorsey. Where do you think the team should go?
Mm-hmm. If I was the GM, what I would do, we have $118 million in cap space, so we got plenty of money to do whatever we want. But I would actually sign Kirk Cousins, and then I would use the 1st and 4th pick on the best players available, probably Saquon Barkley and one of the defensive players. So I'm not exactly sure where they go, where they rank all the quarterbacks. But
Right.
for me, I would rather sign Kirk Cousins because we have the money. Then you don't have to waste a draft pick to trade for a guy like Alex Smith, who is one of the other names that's out there. Obviously, the connection with John Dorsey.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think you sign Kirk Cousins and then you draft Saquon Barkley and the best defensive player available. All of a sudden, you're a heck of a lot better immediately overnight.
And talk, because again, when you say 0-16, you're going to say, well, there's no talent on this team. There's talent on this team. So you're saying if you get a veteran guy in there, you can really get that process going quicker because there is other talented players on both sides of the ball.
There's no doubt. We took a number of teams to the wire last year, and I'm not going to say, we were a great team or anything like that, but we were a lot closer to getting a few wins than people thought.
I would agree with that.
And as everybody knows in the NFL, as your quarterback goes, your team goes. So the better your quarterback plays, he's going to raise the level of everybody's play. It's like, when the tide comes in, all the boats rise. That's really what your quarterback is. So he plays better, everyone else plays better. So you get a veteran quarterback in there playing well. Everybody's going to play a little bit better, and all of a sudden you're sitting in there 8-8 or right in the playoff hunt.
Well, then there's the thought of a veteran quarterback to a rookie. You had Deshaun Kaiser. And listen, I was rooting for the guy. I went to Notre Dame.
I really like Deshaun.
Listen, it has nothing to do with who it is. It's a rookie. And you played with a few rookie quarterbacks. So talk about that from the mental side of, okay, it's a rookie quarterback. So is it thought now? We know we have to go through a growing process here.
Yeah, and one thing I love about John Dorsey is right when I sat down with him the first time, he said, I don't believe in playing rookie quarterbacks. I mean, he did that in Kansas City last year, even though he drafted Patrick Mahomes. He was going to play Alex Smith. And so he's going to bring in a veteran quarterback to play because he understands as a rookie, you're just not prepared to win in the NFL if you're going to ask him to drop back. Now, if you're Russell Wilson and you're going to run around and make plays with your feet, that's a different animal right there because that's not really your true quarterback where he's dropping back, reading the defense, going through progressions. But for me, I think as a quarterback, when you're a rookie, it takes 3 years before you're really proficient enough in the NFL to be able to stand back there, pick apart a defense, and move your team down the field consistently. I think of it like being a doctor. You graduate your undergrad, you're in pre-med, you're not ready to go do surgery on somebody. You still need 3 years of sort of hands-on practice.
Interns,
because there's really that much to learn when it comes to being an NFL quarterback. It's so much different than being a college quarterback.
All right, Joe Thomas with us, and we're going to have his Twitter view coming up in a little bit. But you said you go and get Kirk Cousins. Okay, to go and get Kirk Cousins, you have to convince him to come to Cleveland.
I've got about 35 million reasons why you should come to Cleveland.
But besides that, make the pitch. How would you get Kirk Cousins to Cleveland?
Well, I think the easy pitch is, first of all, you're going to love Cleveland. Mike knows it's a great city. It's a city on the rise.
Like
everyone likes to make fun of Cleveland, but it really is a great city. I've made my home there for 11 years, and we love it there. We've got the best NFL fans. I think we have $118 million in cap space. We've got all these draft picks.
And you could take most of it.
That's right. We could give you $100 million this year. How does that sound, Kirk? That's the end. That's the close. But outside of all those things, this fan base in Cleveland is so passionate that if you were the face of the franchise, which the quarterback will be, and you turn this thing around and you take us to a couple playoffs, I mean, Bernie Kosar is still a legend there, and
Yes,
he never
he
won a
is.
Super Bowl. You win a Super Bowl, you're going to have 3 statues in town.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
Browns left tackle Joe Thomas in studio with us. By the way, I owe you 1,000 apologies, or actually about 340 apologies, because I shorted you. I said 10,039 snaps. It was 10,363.
Yeah, you did.
So that's on me, and I apologize for that.
I don't want to say anything, but
yeah,
it should have been. I mean, it should have been. I wouldn't have made it through 3 snaps.
Well, there was one time you came on the show and we had said you'd miss one play, and you highly disputed that. It was for the play. It was a fake field goal or something.
It was
like
a
that.
fake punt.
A fake punt. Yes,
down,
yeah.
Fake punt.
They were trying to take away from him as they play in the field.
Oh, hell no.
He fought that battle and won. Yeah,
we're having none of that.
None of that. Yeah.
We are having none of that here on Golic and Wingo as Joe Thomas is with us. Okay. You want to play the Twitter view game?
Let's do it, yeah.
We asked you guys on our Twitter feed at 1-800-Flowers.com. Send in your Twitter view questions for Joe. Why don't you lead us off?
Let's go. Michael wants to know, is a hot dog a sandwich?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It is the universal puzzler.
Well, I think if you can put a hot dog on a piece of bread, it's a sandwich. But I don't really like hot dogs on bread. It's got to be on a bun. So I'm going to say hot dog is not a sandwich.
Okay, there you go.
I'm with you, because if it was a sandwich, you know what they'd call it? A sandwich. It's a hot dog. It's
the hot dog is what it is. I mean, it's been then what it's on. I mean, we don't call it. Say you want a burger.
I'm team hot dog.
All right.
I'm team hot dog on this.
Okay.
One. You got another? Go ahead.
Yeah. Mike wants to know, what player that you face had the best smack talk game.
Nobody ever really trash talked me, but I always
because you were whooping them. That's
a bad one to smack talk.
I always liked Terrell Suggs because I always thought he was funny when he would talk. I would hear him talk to the receivers and the tight ends, and he would talk to the line a little bit, but he was funny about it. It wasn't like malicious. Yeah. He was just trying to have a good time out there.
Did you ever talk on the field?
Not really. I was really quiet. I was the guy that liked to help him up and say, "Hey, how's your family, bud?" Because you want to sort of get on their good side. I
think the most
you want to let the sleeping bears sleep.
He's the Andrew Luck of offensive line, because whenever he gets
praise him.
Oh, that was a great hit.
Yeah,
man.
great
really
job, man.
The most silent person I ever played against was Anthony Munoz.
Really,
and the best as well. But I mean, didn't say a word, and then just blocked the hell out of you.
All right, Dave has a question that I think a lot of fans feel leading up to Super Bowl 52. Are players getting tired of the Patriots' dominance?
I would say universally around the league, everybody hates the Patriots because they're tired of seeing them win everything all the time. And I think the fans are the same way. I think secretly I'm happy they're there in the Super Bowl so I can cheer against them. But we are, as players, we have passion and compassion, I would say, empathy for like the Jacksonvilles, the Clevelands, the teams that haven't been there, that have great fan bases, and we feel like they deserve it because there's a lot of people in the AFC that would like to be in the Super Bowl, and we're tired of seeing the Patriots always there.
But you have to respect on some level the length of this dominance they've been able to do.
Oh, you absolutely respect
crazy.
it. Yeah. Absolutely respect it, but that doesn't mean you have to like it.
See, that's the delineation. You got another one there?
Well, somebody wants to know how you'd have done pass blocking against me, but that's not even a fair question to ask.
Did you pass rush? I thought you were just in there in goal line situations
there
to fall over.
No, he has 9 sacks. I have 10?
9.5.
9.5. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Over under 9.5.
No.
And how many snaps?
That I have 11.5 career sacks in 9 years of play. I like to call that consistent.
That's right.
Okay?
I agree.
Excellent.
A little over one a year. I was a run stopper, as they say.
You know what you were you, and that's all any of us can be, my friend.
You were the best version of yourself.
Here's the biggest difference of Joe and I. So I got to played 9 years in the league, started about half my games, so it was
the biggest difference between you. It's Pro Bowls, right?
Well, no. The fact that I played 9 years, it was fun. I enjoyed myself, got to start half the games, and then I move on. Joe was going to walk into the Hall of Fame, obviously, and one of the biggest differences, most end their career my way, where. Why did you retire, Mike? Nobody called anymore. Joe is going to get to decide when he wants to retire. It was basically decided for me whether I was going to retire.
Some people are retired.
Yeah.
They don't choose to retire.
The league retired
They
me.
are retired. There is a difference.
Exactly.
Real quickly, Rick wants to know, how many Brinks trucks do my Seahawks need to pay you to convince you to come to protect Russell Wilson?
It depends on if they're filled with gold bars or if they're filled with $100 stacks.
Okay, so
I would say 4 gold bars, probably 12 dollar stacks, $100 stacks.
Seattle, he's put it out there for
Yeah,
you. Seattle,
simple.
he's put it out there for you.
I mean, you have the richest owner in the NFL.
All right, real quickly, my daughter, who, as I said hello to you. She wants to know, is a tater tot in the French fry family?
I thought that was a good one this morning, and that kind of goes along with the hot dog one. And I would say a tater tot is its own member of the universe because it's so well liked. It's convenient to put in your pocket to save for later.
Right.
But I don't think you would do that with a French fry. So I'm going to say tater tot is sort of its own beautiful creation.
There you go.
A hot dog is a hot dog, not a sandwich, and a tater tot is a tot. It's not a fry.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.